I'm Miri from EER Global, and we have Khaled and Muhammad from ARC Recruitment in the Emirates, which are our local partners. And today we would like to talk about the best ways to hire and employ people in the Emirates. Basically, this webinar will conclude two parts. The first part will be like a conversation with we have a slide that I'm sharing in a minute with all your questions, and we're going to answer them. And then after about 45 minutes, 1 hour, we will basically open this webinar and we will include all of you, and we can see each other and we can actually have a conversation and a discussion. And if anything wasn't answered, it will be answered at that point. Between now and then, if you want to ask questions during the presentation, please do so by writing in the chat. We have Inbar, our administrative manager. She's the host, and she will let us know who wants to ask questions, and we will allow that, of course. So if it's in the same topic, I think it makes sense. Let's start. I'm going to share my screen with you. Bear with me, please. 1 second. Sorry, that's just because I'm really excited. So, second. Okay. Yeah, sorry, just because I'm excited. All right. So, can you see my screen? Perfect. Yep. Okay. So, the first thing that people asked was, obviously, when we deal with HR, relates to employment law. So people would like to know what are the basic employment law things that as an HR person you need to pay attention to in the Emirates. Anything you can share with us between the benefits that you need to give, what do you need to do if you're making people redundant, any kind of pay, sick pay, pension, and so on. So we're happy to answer, if you can answer this question.
So I think there's I think two parts to this. There's the actual law, and then there's what's standard. So basic employment law is obviously you got to pay people their salaries, and then you also you have to give them medical insurance, and it depends on which emirate that you're hiring in. So look, most of the tech companies and sort of high-end expat jobs, they would always be based in Abu Dhabi or in Dubai. So I'll just sort of focus when I talk about sort of laws or things like that, I'd always be referring back to those. So Abu Dhabi, you've got different laws. The basic laws are you've got to apply medical insurance and flights home and visas for the employee and their family up to 3 kids.
Okay.
And then also in Dubai, it's only for the employee. Some companies, 90% of our companies will give the extra benefits to the family of the employee. But again, it's not the basic law, but it's common practice. In terms of sick pay and annual leave and things like that, it's one across the board, which is a minimum of 22 working days annual leave. And then again, that's the basic. Most of our clients are 25, 28, 30 days annual leave.
Okay.
And
what about holidays?
Say that again.
Bank holidays. Do you have like any special holidays?
Yeah, we've got plenty. So we've got, I think on an average, we've got about 11 public holidays or bank holidays. That's on a good year. I mean, on an average year. On some years, I think 2 years ago, we had like 16 days because they didn't fall on the weekend and they fell in the weekend. So that, so we've got both religious and non-religious holidays. So we've got like, New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, some companies, that's the basic. And then some companies will give, depending on the culture, Christmas, Easter, some even give Diwali for, some of the Indians.
Okay.
So again, it depends on the company, but as a basic sort of requirement, yes, we've got about 10 or 11 bank holidays a year.
Okay.
And then in terms of sick leave, there's 15 days fully paid sick leave days, and there's
Okay.
30 days half pay,
Okay.
15 days at quarter pay, and then 30 days unpaid. So in total, there's like 90 days.
That's a lot. Do you find that people take advantage of that? Because there's a lot of sick days?
Not really. Like, I don't know.
I wouldn't say so, no.
No.
Because the culture here is sort of, it's quite a good work-life balance. So
I see.
again, it's sort of like a European vibe. So things don't close early.
I see.
Until late. So, if you finish at 5, 6, even 7, most people live within a 10-minute drive, 15-minute drive to their.
So what's the what would be the contracted working hours per employee, would you say?
Typically, probably 8 till 5.
8 till 5.
But we work Sunday to Thursday.
I see.
Yeah.
You guys the same?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So there won't be much change there.
Yeah. Okay. And what about pension?
So we don't have a pension scheme yet. It's in the process.
I see.
Because it's difficult. Because as you can imagine, 90% of the UAE is expat based. So there's no real pension scheme here for people to be able to take home or things like that, which they're setting up. But we do have something called a gratuity, which is sort of for every year that you're with an employer, you have access to 1 month's salary.
Yeah, this is for people, this is like the redundancy pay in Israel.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a really good sort of scheme because if you're with a company, say 5 or 6 years, then, you're eligible to take away when you leave, 5 or 6 months worth of a salary. And it's calculated on your final salary when you resign. So if you start,
this is uncapped. It's uncapped.
Yeah.
So if you want to fire someone, do you need to give them some kind of a warning, or how does the process goes?
I think it's the same in most countries. So you've obviously got to prove, over a certain period of time that you've given them a warning, that you gave them an opportunity to learn and grow and change. And I think there's 2 warnings, and then on the third,
I see.
That's the law.
I see. And would you say that in general, the tribunals, the law trials would tend to go towards the employee or towards the employer? What is the norm?
It used to be very heavy based to the employer, but I would say recently it's made a big shift because they want to clean up, the market for people to attract people to come. So people are scared to come because they feel like they're going to get, ripped off by an employer or something. Then no one's going to come to the region. An example of this is like a candidate. It was on the news. A candidate accepted a job, resigned from his current job, and he was on big money. So he was on about $20,000 US dollars a month, tax free.
Okay.
And he resigned and then worked his notice period. And then 2 days before he was supposed to join, the company that hired him told him, "Oh, we can't take you on anymore." So he took them to court, and he won a year's worth of salary from the employer because obviously they should have told him earlier.
It was due to COVID?
No, it wasn't COVID actually. It was just the company's vision changed, and they didn't need that role. But the law here is if you told someone to leave a job and they've resigned, then it becomes responsibility. Yeah.
What about? Sorry.
I was just going to say, so little things like that, a couple of years ago, would never have happened, but they've started to make that change.
I see. What about maternity pay? Can you share some details? What is what is the law, and do companies give more than that usually?
So they give normally 45 days maternity leave for women, and they give 10 days for men for paternity leave.
Okay. This is fully paid?
Yeah, fully paid. And then after the 45 days for a woman, then it's unpaid if they want to take longer, and they're allowed to take up to 9 months without
pay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, that's the basic sort of coverage or sort of allowance. I've got clients that will do like what many Western countries do, 6 or 12 month fully paid. So yeah, but that's they're the little things that will set apart one company from another, and people, especially within the tech space, where you really want to attract the best talent and you want to make them as comfortable as possible. They're the little things that will really set you apart.
And would you say, like here in Israel, most of the telecom and high-tech companies, professional services, they would sponsor lunch to a certain amount. You would give like a voucher and people can buy the lunch and the work will pay for that. Is it common in Abu Dhabi or Dubai? Not really.
Really, I've got some clients that they'll have, lunch supplied maybe 2 times a week, like the beginning of the week. Or they might go out for, Thursday evening, drinks and food, things like that, but it's not a standard, no.
I see. And would you say the market is generally like unionized, like most companies are with like an employee union, or not so much, like within telecom and high tech?
No, there's no union.
No union. All right, no unions. It's good news for employers. Yeah. Okay. Any other laws that we need to look into when we are hiring people?
The only other one that a lot of people sort of don't realize is if you hire someone and you bring them from overseas,
right?
Or even if they're here, but they're originally from the UK or wherever, when they leave your company, you have to ask them, are they going to stay in Dubai or the UAE and find other employment, or if they're going to go back home? If they're going to stay, then it's just a simple termination. You pay their redundancy or their gratuity and cancel their insurance. But if they're telling you that they're explicitly going to go home, then it's on by law, you have to actually pay for the repatriation flights back home.
I see. Wow. Okay. Interesting.
Usually only for the employee. But again, some companies will do it for the whole family. Some companies even give you an allowance to take your belongings with you, things like that.
Okay. So the next topic would be salary benchmark. So people want to know, how do we find data on salaries in EAU, and where do we find this data? What is the average salary? What is the typical salary, I would say, for a programmer, software developer, or maybe you can give us an example of a sales director for high-tech company with 7 years of experience, just to give us a feel in US dollars of what the salaries look like and where we would find this data.
Okay.
That varies. I mean, that's a tricky one, because back to what you were saying about companies doing different benefits to be more comfortable places to work. It's the same with salaries. It depends on the industry, or then again, it could break down to 4 companies within a sector. They know what each other's paying, and it really depends.
But what we can do is, after this, I can share with you a salary survey that we've done, and it breaks it down. It's quite detailed, so different levels from this to this in dirhams, but then you can just calculate it in US dollars, and it's all the different verticals. So everything from pharma to tech to HR to marketing, tech, digital, whatever. So we can share that. That's not a problem. But look, to be honest, like Khaled was saying, it really depends. So some companies will give, especially within the tech space, startup space, product companies, they give things like equity. They give things like, family, medical, family, insurance. They'll do schooling for kids. So then the salaries would be a little bit less to make it up. And then some companies will just pay a higher base and say everything is on you. It really depends. But for example, you mentioned like a developer, say for example, like a front-end developer with, say 5 or 6 years, you could be paying anywhere between 65,000 US dollars up to about 198,000 US dollars a year, tax-free. Right?
I see. So yes, that's another thing. So no tax at all, no income tax, 0. So I think it's a reason to move.
For candidates, talent, it's amazing. Obviously, for companies, you have to pay a 5%
Okay.
VAT.
Right.
Again, but there's a threshold. So if you don't make over 400,000 dirhams a year, then you don't pay. But if you do, then you have to start to pay, and it's paid quarterly as well. So the tax authority will send you an invoice, you pay it.
Okay.
But again, that's very small when you consider, as companies, you don't pay for.
Okay. If we look at the local job boards, would it be in English, like the jobs will be posted in English as well as Arabic?
I'd say the majority is in English.
I've only ever maybe a handful of Arabic jobs, and that's usually, government jobs that are, quite senior, not really tech related, more marketing and content and video production and stuff. But 99.999% of jobs are in English.
I see. And is it common to advertise the salary band?
Yeah.
So we can look at those job boards. So any typical job boards that you would recommend?
Yeah, you'll be looking at Naukri, Bait,
Golf Talent.
Yeah.
Okay, we will, guys. I will write it down and we will send it in the summary for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, they're the four main ones, and that's a good indication of what people are.
What the market is like. So, what would be an average salary? Would you say?
Look, for tech, I would say average between about 20,000 would be average, 20,000 dirhams, which is about per month. This is per month, sorry. So we work per month. That's about 5,500 dollars per month tax free. That's the average salary. But again, that's taken into consideration. There's probably a lot more people underpaid here because of especially right now with COVID, there's a lot of people that are desperate to stay, so they'll take whatever. But I think before COVID, that probably would have been up to about 25 to 27,000 a month.
Okay. So what is the minimum wage, just as a comparison?
There is no minimum wage.
There is no minimum wage. Okay, interesting. That says something. Okay. So the next topic that I would like to bring is a complicated topic, and it's a culture. So obviously, the UAE, it's an Arabic country, but you've mentioned in our earlier conversations that 90% of the population, especially in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, are expats. So it's like a huge multicultural environment. And I would like you to explain a little bit about what would be the right way for us as Israelis. We're very direct, very warm, and very abrupt can be perceived as potentially aggressive in our behavior. So what would be the right way for us doing business with the locals, not just, if it's an Arabic person, especially I guess with government jobs, if we have clients from the government, as well as the expats in the Emirates?
Yeah, good question. I think we touched on this last time. So with locals, you're going to have patience. Things will happen, but it will happen at their pace. So Western culture is very direct. It's very results driven. I think Americans are quite direct as well. So they respect having a Western business or a Western partner. They like the professionalism. They like what you're bringing to the table. But at the same time, they want you to go at their pace. So it will happen, but it's either nothing's happening or it's really fast. Now, on the flip side, dealing with expats, there isn't really one size fits all for expats. I mean, if your culture tends to be the Israeli way of doing things, then people tend to work that way. So if you work for an American company, you tend to fit the culture over an American company. Just on the local side, it is more, I'd be a lot more just go at their pace, be patient, it will happen, try to build a relationship.
Right.
You can sometimes push away, locals from wanting to work with you, even if your product is the best, the price is the best, what you're delivering is the best, but because you might be a little bit too pushy or a bit too demanding in terms of, okay, I need this now, I need this by this date or whatever, sometimes that could turn them off, and it's more about the relationship. So for them, I remember my first local government client, I didn't start working with them for 6 months But I would invite me to the office, get to know me, get to know my family, invited me to his house. And this guy was like the Director General of the Prime Minister's office. We went over to his house for Ramadan, wanted to meet my family, wanted to break bread with me, that type of, vibe before. And then I didn't even ask him. He just signed the contract and gave it to me the next day. And it was just like...
So it's all personal.
Personal, yeah, exactly. And I think the more pushy you are and the more demanding you are, the more that turns them to feel like, okay, well, this is just a business relationship rather than this personal relationship. But again, look, it's a very general statement, but I would say 90% of locals work in that manner. But you will get every now and then a local who's lived and worked in the UK and born and raised in the UK or America or France or Switzerland, and they've adapted to the Western mindset, right? Where business is business. I need to get from A to Z as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible. So yes, every now and then that's refreshing. But at the same time, it is what it is. You get used to it. But yeah, I think that's the main thing.
So let's go back to expats because there are 90% of the population there. So in our earlier conversations, you mentioned that there are a lot of people from APAC. Can you remind me in percentage, out of the 90%, how many of them are from APAC, generally speaking?
APAC is probably the wrong sort of region. So APAC is quite large. So out of that 90%, so out of that 90%, about 50% or 45% are from Southeast Asia. So like, Indians, Pakistanis, Sri Lankans, and that probably comes down to the labor market here. So, obviously people in construction and all the trades. So, they're obviously from those regions, and a lot of the nannies and helps and cleaners and stuff are from these parts of the world. And then after that, it's quite heavy Egyptian, Lebanese, Jordanian, Syrian, and then English, and then the rest of Europe is sort of...
I see. So basically, from what you're saying, expats that are working either in Abu Dhabi or Dubai are expected to blend in the culture of the original company, from where the company came from. Yeah. So they would have to match themselves in a way, in order to...
I'm Australian, and when I first came here, I worked for 2 recruitment companies that were British owned and British run, and I was the only non-British person in the company.
Okay.
And my wife used to complain to me because I'd started talking like them. My mannerisms started to become more British. My jokes were becoming more British, less Australian. So you just adapt, and even the way of thinking and the way of, working, I learned things that I'd never done in recruitment before in Australia because that's how it was done in the UK. So it's a bit like that. But I think for tech and, even fintech and medical tech and stuff, I think that's less of the case. It's more tech is tech, right? So there's not an Israeli way of doing tech. There's not an American way of doing tech. Tech is tech. It's just, I guess, you learn to adapt with the people. Like you get to know the people, you get to know their culture. Like you said, maybe more, abrupt or, and so you learn to accept that they're not being rude. This is just how they are. They're not being aggressive. So that's, that's just any company, I guess.
So we need to be aware of maybe mannerism that relates to Indians, Pakistans, and so on, because they're the majority, I guess.
I never ate Indian food before in my life because I don't like spice. Then I came here and now I eat Indian food or I eat Pakistani food. So there is a big community of them, and you just learn to live with them, and it's just normal. Like you don't even see it.
You don't notice, Okay. So in terms of industries, so we have here guests from all types of companies, industry and telecom and high tech and online and medical. And the question for you would be, what would be the leading industries in the UAE? Would you feel, what type of companies would be doing a smart move, moving their offices back to the Emirates? Because whether there is a leading talent or good pool of talents in the Emirates, if not, what's the point? So what would you say would be the leading industry? We know in London, it's the finance for Israel. For instance, in Israel, we have high tech. So what would be the leading industries in the UAE?
I mean, there is the leading ones now, which Mo could probably tell you about from a tech perspective, with the sort of startup ecosystem, fintech, medtech, which is sort of grown quite healthily. But then traditionally, the UAE typically, especially Dubai, has been tourism, real estate, and of course oil and gas. But in terms of new entrants into the market, you'd be looking at tech, startups.
So I was going to say, so probably the best entry point for a lot of companies would be if they're in the tech space, right? So it doesn't matter what tech sort of space they're in, but over the last year, I've seen a lot of fintechs, get funding here and really grow. Med tech, cybersecurity, what else? E-commerce as well. So any e-commerce platform, there's been a lot. And I think because the UAE has been so heavily dependent on malls, so malls in this country are like a destination, right? You go there and it's just to go shopping. Like we've gone to a mall to have fun and with the kids and blah, blah, and we haven't actually bought anything except for food and so that the UAE has been so heavily dependent on the mall's ecosystem, like bricks and mortar stores. So especially with the way things are moving and the more expats that come from overseas that are used to buying things online and not wanting to go to the mall because it's the comfort of your own home. So a lot of e-commerce platforms have popped up and they're making, things a little bit different. So even the traditional stores are now looking to go online, to go digital, to go e-commerce. So I think that's a really good place as well. But like I said, any fintech, medtech, cybersecurity, any like cloud sort of solutions. These are the new sort of verticals.
So would you recommend to transfer which units would you recommend them to transfer? Would it be the sales just to conquer the market, or would it be development or any other part of the business?
I think to be honest, if you've already got an operation in Israel, it would make more sense if you want to enter this market, you'd then move your sales or you'd hire salespeople here, or you'd bring them from Israel because they know the product, but then also design. So your experience design, so all the people that do UX and service design, because I think the way things are designed potentially for Israel because of the language and things like that, and the types of people. So in Israel, it's usually one demographic, right? Israelis, or whereas here...
Not really, but okay.
But compared to here, we've got 206 different nationalities, right? You've got some of the richest people in the world and some of the people in the world.
I understand.
Religions, right? So when you're designing for here, it's very different. Even in Australia, we're very multicultural, but the main culture or the main sort of subculture is, white Caucasians and then probably Chinese, right? So when you're designing a product, you're thinking of these two groups as your main consumers. So I think that would probably be one of the main hubs that you'd need to build here. The development can be done anywhere. It doesn't even have to be done in Israel. It could be done in Eastern Europe. It could be done in India. Depending on cost and what you want to save. But I think the main hubs that you want to move here: sales, business development, customer service as well. So if you've got account managers and people looking after accounts, I think it needs to be on the ground here, and people that I think if you had customer service people based in Israel and then you had someone here who's an Arab or someone who's got, resentment towards the whole, Israel-Arab sort of conflict, they might feel uncomfortable to call a customer service center in Israel. So I think that would need to sort of be based here until things start to settle down and people become aware of the situation. Because some people don't even know that Israel and the UAE have sort of become friends, right? So that's still only people that are, aware, they know, but a lot of people don't even realize because they're just going by their day-to-day. And, so I think that's the three main ones. So customer service, sales, and design.
Okay. So this brings me to the next topic, recruitment. So what would be the recruitment process? How would it look like? What it will contain? If you can go from the beginning to the end, is it common to do a reference check, for instance? How many interviews? How many interviews is it typically to do? What kind of tests would you typically do in this process?
Well, I think it's quite standard. Like, I think it's the same globally. Like, it's not, they haven't reinvented the wheel in this sense. From a recruitment perspective, it's, obviously, if we're a recruitment agency and we're headhunting for our clients, we will do the initial search. We would screen candidates and, send the shortlist to the client. And then, the client would then engage us to organize interviews. So there'd usually be, depending again, look, if it's a startup who knows what they want, they're urgent to hire, it could be literally 1 or 2 interviews and they, this person's amazing, we want to hire them. But then obviously the bigger the company, the more layers within the company, then it could be between 3 and 4 interviews. And one of those stages would be a task or a test, depending on the role. If it's a tech company or tech role, they might have a development test and, that's part of it. Then the next step would be them being interviewed based on what they did and why you did it like this, why didn't you do it like that. So it's, like I said, it's usually depending on the size of the company and the urgency of the role. And usually that takes anywhere from, say, 2 weeks would be the earliest I've ever seen it sort of complete. And it can go up to 6 months depending on, if there's security checks, credit checks, depending on.
So you do all those checks for any position?
No, not any. So usually it's banks, government, and cybersecurity companies. They will do their, so they would ask us to provide passports, birth certificates, whatever the documentation that is required. If they're here, it's a little bit different. There's Emirates IDs and visa copies and stuff like that. Then they would take it and go get a security agency to do the checks. And then sometimes they even go as far, especially banks, they'll go as far as to doing credit checks in their home country and police checks in their home country. Because some people unfortunately do escape their countries to come here with death.
So it's crucially to do it, actually. Okay. And what about the interview itself? I mean, do you think, is it common for companies to do like a panel interview where there are 3 or 4 people? I know when I lived in the UK, when I was interviewing for positions, I often came to a situation where I had like a panel in front of me. Is it common to have a panel interview?
Yeah, again, it depends on the level. If it's a junior role, probably not. As you get up and, I've had, VP level roles that have 5 or 6 people in front of them and they have to present, at a different vertical. So someone could be from a sales team, someone could be from design, tech, IT, and it's just more cutting off bases to make sure that this person is able to talk the language that everyone understands. But again, like I said, it just depends on the level of the role and the duties and responsibilities, and if this role requires them to be managing different stakeholders and things like that.
And in terms of HR interview, would you say that this comes usually at the beginning or at the end, or do they have HR interviews usually?
I mean, that depends, doesn't it? I mean, you probably noticed in your own experience doing recruitment, some people like to put HR driving the recruitment. Other more urgent roles, HR will come in once the VP or the MD sort of green light it.
Sometimes HR is the first screening, right? And if they don't pass that, then they don't go through. And then some companies will, HR is just a formality, just to talk to them about, this is the culture, this is this, this is that, and that type. So again, it depends on the urgency of the role, depends on the company and what they value. If personality fit is most important, and it's usually driven by the HR. Tech and the talent is more important than culture is. So it just really depends. I saw one of the questions, come up on the chat.
The background.
Is there a platform? Unfortunately, there isn't a standard platform. Usually, it's done through a government agency. So you would go to Ministry of Immigration, I think it is, or Ministry of Human Resources and Emiratization. One of those two, I can't remember. And then you would physically have to apply for a security check or a background check. And that's, that's the standard process. But again, I've only ever done security checks not me personally, but the client does them, and it's usually only banks, cybersecurity companies, and government.
Okay. By the way, in Israel, I would say that the HR market is really dominated by women. So most, even for this webinar, most of the people registered are females. Is it true in Abu Dhabi and Dubai as well, that the HR people would be females?
I'd say so, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very rare that you'd get a senior HR appointment as a male.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the next topic was around job interviews. So are there any like do's and don'ts, something that we should really be aware of, or something we shouldn't really ask, or something we shouldn't really do or do when we do a job interview?
I think we touched on this last time. I mean, you can ask a lot of questions here that you wouldn't necessarily maybe ask in Israel or Europe or the West in general, relating to age.
So everything is open.
Anything's open. Marital status, age.
You can actually ask if you're married.
Yeah,
you can ask
kids.
Yeah, married, kids. You can ask how old you are. You can ask if
really, and if people will not get offended.
No. Even down to the point where they'll ask perhaps religious questions to see if they're going to fit in with the culture.
Right.
That comes up sometimes as well.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
Just for everyone to understand, it's not so that we can when we ask if you're married and kids, it's not so that I can say, oh, she's not a right fit because she's married, she's not going to fit in our culture. It's purely based on a cost thing, because if you're providing medical insurance for your employee and their family, and they've got 3 kids, and insurance costs say $5,000 a year per person, then that you've got to take that into consideration when you're making that hire. So that's the reason we ask those type of questions if you're married and kids, because again, if you're married, insurance for a woman is higher because you're not supposed to have sex outside of marriage here. So in theory, if you're married, then you are able to have kids, right? And if you're not, then it's a lot cheaper. Things like that. It's very. It was weird for me when I first came from Australia, like hearing these questions.
Yeah, typically speaking, though, within the recruitment industry, that is standard. There's a cover sheet with the CVs will have all these points on it, so it's not something that we're surprised by.
Okay, it's good to know. Okay, so the next topic would be around working visa, which is really relevant because it's 90% of the people. How easy it is for a company to obtain a working visa? How does it work? Any information you can share on how to obtain a working visa for an expat would be great.
Yeah, so typically speaking, for working visas, your company would sponsor you for the period of your contract. So as long as you're employed by the employer, you will have essentially a working visa. If you choose to leave that company for whatever reason and you want to take up a new role, then typically speaking, you might be able to transfer the visa depending on which jurisdiction or free zone the visa is under, or alternatively, you just cancel it and then take up a new visa with that employer.
From the new employer.
Yeah. So visas are I know there's a quota system in Singapore where hiring an expat can be quite tricky and costly, whereas out here, expat visas are readily available so long as the employer wants to hire you as an employee. That the visa comes. So
you don't need a sponsorship plan or something as an employer?
So with an employer, you get an allocated amount of visas based on your license, depending on the property or the office space that you have.
I see.
Okay, so for example, if you have X amount of square meters, then you have, say 10 or 15 or 100 licenses or whatever.
Right.
So that's how you attain the license or the visa spots. And then when you hire someone, the visa is usually between, depending on which part of the country you're in. So if you're in a free zone or mainland, then you get 2 or 3. So for example, every 2 years, if you've got a 2-year visa, then it would automatically get renewed. Your company will renew it for you.
So it's typically for 2 or 3 years, and then it will be renewed.
Yes. They've just introduced 5 and 10-year visas.
I see.
for specific industries because they're trying to build those industries, and a lot of those are, fintech, medtech, cybersecurity, sciences, these type of, not your traditional banking jobs.
Okay. And guys, it's really important for us to remember that unlike any other countries that I know of, it's impossible. It's like a kibbutz. You can never be a citizen, ever. Like, you can live there for 10, 20 years, whatever. You will never become a citizen. I think it affects the immigration and the turnover of employees because people can never feel at home because of that. And it's really hard to be an immigrant all your life. So I'm guessing a lot of people tend to move back after a decade or so, or do they stay?
I've got actually 3 of the girls that work with us. They were born and raised here. They're 25, 26, 27.
I see.
2 of them are Indian, one's Filipino. They've never...
Okay. So people stay?
Yeah, one of them's never actually been back to India.
She's never wow. But what is their status as the kids of the people who were expats?
They're still expats.
They're expats as well. So even their kids, they can never be citizens. It's huge psychological effect on the immigration.
They've just introduced some schemes where if you've got X amount of investment in the country, you speak Arabic, you do this, you meet certain criteria, but the main criteria, which a lot of people probably won't agree to, is you have to give up your other passport, right?
Yeah, I see.
So then you can become an Emirati citizen.
Okay.
And,
okay. So people ask about what if they don't have a legal entity, and I will explain. A lot of Israeli companies, when they conquer a new market, they don't necessarily open a legal entity straight away because they want to check it out first, and then they would have one person just on the ground, and then they would contract this person. So can you have a contractor without a visa?
That's something that's changing actually at the moment. So right now you still have to have a visa, but it's easier to get now as a contractor.
Right.
There are companies that will do a lot of these we call them freelance visas.
Yeah, right.
They're 1 or 2 years.
I see.
Again, and a lot of people use it as contractors, like freelance designers, freelance.
So if we want to hire a contract, the person needs to issue a freelance visa, and then we can employ them. Is that correct? Okay, perfect. Because I think this will be really useful for companies. And this will be generated by the person, the contractor. He has to do it himself.
Exactly. The person would go out and he'd make sure he's got all the right, licensing and bank accounts and stuff. Then you can hire him or her.
I see. Okay, fine. So that would bring me to the next question. So 90% of people are expats, but still we're in a different country, and sometimes we have to do business with the local authorities or local services. And the question for you guys would be, would it be, especially when we hire sales and business development, do you think that we're better off as a foreign company hire local people or expats when we need to sell to locals, or not just locals? So there's like two ways of answers for that.
Yeah, I mean, it depends predominantly on your industry. So if the end user is, or the customers tend to be Indian, then there's a lot of Indian salespeople in that space. Alternatively, you need an Arabic speaker. Typically speaking, you have an Egyptian or Jordanian, Syrian. But there is no, if you're selling to locals, typically speaking, you would hire an Arabic speaker. You wouldn't necessarily have a UAE national.
I see.
Unless it's at top tier government level, then you would probably need a UAE national. But it just depends on who the customer you're targeting is. People are very receptive to having representatives directly from the country of origin. So if it's an Italian company, they'll have an Italian salesperson, or an American or a British, and people value this because they feel like they're buying into the brand as part of the sales process. So it is generally on a case-by-case basis. Locals tend to prefer to work in the public sector. Candidate market within sales, just sales, for example, with locals, it's scarce. You don't tend to find that as a profession that you'll find locals in. So there isn't a huge need to have locals sell to locals. If you're selling to the local market, you probably need an Arabic speaker just for building relationships.
I see. So the people that usually come there, do they learn the language? Do they learn Arabic if they're from India, or not really?
I mean, very few. I don't speak Arabic, even though my name says otherwise. And I've been here for 6.5 years.
You speak a word?
Sorry?
And you don't speak a word?
Well, I know a little bit, but that's just by me not needing it. But that's just by me being proactive, trying to learn a bit. There's no need,
to be honest.
There is no need. I see.
Yeah. And I think people realize this. So when you come here, I speak Arabic. I use it to my advantage. And then, some people who, especially like you said, if you're hiring sales jobs, you would probably hire locals. They don't have to be local Emiratis, but Egyptians, Lebanese, Jordanians, whatever, who are on the ground here already. And you wouldn't really need to bring people in from outside, because especially within sales, the market here is so different to the UK or Australia or America or whatever, that you need to have relationships, you need to have contacts. It's just that type of market. So that's
even the biggest local groups here, they speak English.
Wow.
And there isn't a company that you would work for where it's not a company worth working for if they don't speak English. That is the dominant language of business here.
Even the Prime Minister's office, so I work with Sheikh Mohammed's office, I've recruited for them. And they told us we don't, because one of the first questions asked is, do you need someone who's bilingual, right? And I was surprised, because I would have assumed, being a government office, high level, sort of office, they would need someone. They told us, no, just whoever's right for the job. And they ended up hiring a French guy, they ended up hiring a Canadian guy, so yeah, it's not really a need. But again, for sales, I think, again, depending on where they're selling into, they might need to speak Arabic. But then now, especially with fintech and startups and tech in general, whereas English is the main language.
Okay, so the last slide, it's about social media. So where would you say are candidates based in both Abu Dhabi and Dubai? Where do we go to find them? Whether LinkedIn is popular, or are there any other platforms? What about WhatsApp? Here in Israel, it's quite excessively used. So any platforms that you think we need to be in, Facebook or groups or whatever, in order to hire the best talents?
I think LinkedIn is probably king out here. And I think in terms of percentage of engagement for countries, because of the nature of it being an expat city, you'll find professionals here are more career focused. They will be plugged into LinkedIn. WhatsApps, within industries, there's a lot of...
So I use WhatsApp to speak to clients, to speak to candidates, to book people in for interviews and things like that.
Right.
I'll say 60%, 65% of my conversations with clients and candidates are WhatsApp or phone calls. Emails just to confirm stuff. So it's but like Khaled was saying, LinkedIn is king. Everyone's on LinkedIn here. Everyone engages on LinkedIn. I use Facebook for certain groups. So, creative market for social media, hires for, developers. So there's, UAE developers, there's UAE freelancers, there's UAE this on Facebook, and big communities, 40, 50, 60,000 members on these Facebook groups.
Is there a large group on Facebook for expats that you would recommend?
There's literally one for every nationality. So my wife is Australian, so when she came, there's an Aussies in the UAE group. Then there's British mums, British fathers, British families. There's so many different groups. And like I was telling you before in our last conversation, when people move to Dubai from a foreign country, everyone is so helpful, because everyone remembers when they came to Dubai, they lost, and they're more than happy to help. They're more than happy to give you advice. I've had, I remember when I first came, I had a random person who saw me looking for something, just said, "Oh, I know where you're going. Do you want me to give you a lift?" In Australia, I was never getting in that car.
Right.
But here, like, yeah, sweet. I'm going that way, right? So it's very friendly like that. And now I'm still friends with that guy, like the guy that gave me a lift.
Wow.
So
Right.
it's just how it is. So there is a lot of, like you were saying, there is a lot of community pages on Facebook. And even on top of the nationality ones or where you're from, there's even ones for where you live. So where I live, at the Mac Hills, sort of, that's where I live. And that's a Facebook group and a WhatsApp group. So we share things on there. There's Dubai Marina, there's all the different areas.
Which are all high, I'm just explaining for the Israelis. So like tall buildings, like in Hong Kong, where we see like thousands of families in one building and everyone can be on Facebook. And most of the groups are in English.
Yeah. There's obviously a lot of Filipinos and Indians, like we were saying, and Pakistanis. So you'll find, if it's a Pakistani group, then they're speaking Pakistani.
Sure.
If it's Filipino, they're speaking Tagalog. But if it's mainly, and sometimes the French, because they're a bit like that. But apart from that, most other nationalities, will communicate in English.
Okay. Thank you for that. Inbar, can you let everyone in? First of all, thank you, Khaled and Muhammad, for a brilliant and interesting discussion, at least from my end. We're letting everyone in now, so please open your cameras so we can all see you. And if you would like to ask Khaled and Muhammad or myself any questions about hiring and employing in EAU, now would be the time. So I'm putting kind of the ball in everyone's court. So we'll be happy to hear from you and to see you guys, because now everyone is you. Sorry?
There was a question we missed in English.
Oh, yes.
A little bit about us. So just to give you
a quick snapshot. Sorry, my bad.
Just to give you a little bit of snapshot about myself. I moved here 5 years ago, nearly 6. I've got nearly 12 years experience in recruitment. Started off in Australia, and I've only really ever recruited in digital and tech. So I've never recruited HR, marketing, these type of roles. I used to be a designer, so that's how I sort of fell into the recruitment in that space. And then, just from a personal perspective, I know moving different countries is quite an experience, but, I'm Australian, my parents are Egyptian, I'm Muslim, my wife is Australian, but her parents are Argentinian Italian, and she's Catholic. So moving here, like I was telling Miri before, I thought I would have it easy because I speak the language and I share the religious and cultural, similarities with the locals here. And I thought my wife would have it difficult because she doesn't, and she's white, and she doesn't speak Arabic, and she's Catholic, and she wears a crucifix and things like that. We came here, and she's probably had it easier than me because, like I was saying, the people are so friendly, people are so outgoing towards expats. And they look at me and they go, "You're just an Arab, you're one of us, So that's my story. And
similar to Mo, I moved here not from Australia, from the UK. So I'm born and bred in Edinburgh. Moved here 6.5 years ago, but it feels like 2 years because the seasons here are constantly blue skies and sunny, so it's flown. But I've been doing recruitment for about, scary now, 7 years, across a multitude of industries, mainly IT, tech, also technical sales as well, that being engineering. Similar to Mo, I think I was attracted to Dubai because it's a multicultural city. It's a very ambitious place. You'll find professionals here are very driven and career focused, and everyone's looking to get ahead. That's what sort of attracted me to Dubai anyway. But similar to Mo, my name's Arabic, and I mentioned earlier I don't speak Arabic, so I'm half Scottish, half Libyan, so I'm a bit of a hybrid.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. I'm sorry I missed it from the beginning for some reason. So I can see now questions. Yes, we will provide contact details at the end with all the summary, and also you can contact myself because we work together. Guys, if you want to ask more questions, or it will be really good to see you. Right now, no one is with their camera on. Any questions you have for Khaled or Mo or myself, now is the time.
Hi, Miri, and guys, it's Lilith. I'm from Healthy.io. It's a medical device company here in Israel. It's really exciting to hear about the expert and the multicultural aspects and everything. Nevertheless, it's a dictatorship country. How it's aligned with everything? Like, do you feel it or not? Does it has any kind of impact eventually?
When I first came from Australia, I sort of had that same mentality because I was worried, like I was saying, I could probably deal with it because the dictatorship is very religiously driven. So I thought, as a Muslim, I could probably handle it a little bit more than my wife. But then when you get here, that's the stereotype. Then when you get here, I think you realize that it is a dictatorship, but it's also, it sort of makes sense, and it's all there to keep everyone happy and safe. So in 5 years, I've never seen anyone in a fight. I've never seen any drunk people in the street. Yes, in the bars and clubs and stuff. So it's all there for the benefit of the people. That's how I look at it. And yeah, I don't know. He might.
Yeah, I mean, dictatorship. It's a bit of a contentious one. I mean, dictatorship in this region, I wouldn't say so. It's more of a royal rulership where the royals are very well respected by the locals, and they see it as them. So, as well. Yeah, it's Sheikh Mo, Sheikh Mohammed, I should say, in Dubai. They really are respected because of their vision and what they've built in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So, and also the locals, because it's a royal sort of monarchy, they see themselves as sort of empowering their wisdom, the wisdom of their leaders. A dictatorship is more, Iraq, Libya. I think here there's more of it gives it credibility, the fact that it is a monarchy, they are respected around the world. But yeah, I mean, there isn't democracy per se, but that tends to
12 hours.
speed things up when it comes to development anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions now that we can also see you? I know there was a technical problem, so now we can see everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to say, it's very exciting that we can speak together. It's really great.
Thank you, Mina. Okay. Michal, hi, nice to see you. Galit, any questions?
I have one more, if it's okay.
Yes, Lilith, sure.
In terms of dress code, after hours event, like, what is the culture regarding that?
Again, I think
the important questions.
Yeah, look, again, I always go back to personal experiences because, like I said, my wife is not from this part of the world originally, and her family, as soon as we told them that we were moving here, her family were like, what are you talking about? There's zero chance she's going to go there. She can't dress the way she wants. She can't eat or drink or, whatever. And then we came here and she hasn't changed anything at all. Obviously there is some restrictions on dress code, even for men, when you go to government office buildings. So like, even for men, you've got to cover your knees. You can't wear short sleeve, and that's more respect, right? And then for women in government offices and sort of, meetings and stuff, again, cover your shoulders and knees. But then again, outside of here, like we were telling Miri before, one of the beauties I think is like you can go to the beach and you could see a family who the mother and daughters and stuff are full niqab. And then next to them, literally like side by side, is a lady in a bikini sunbaking, right? And that's the to me, that's the beauty of this place. There's respect. People, you'll never hear a Muslim lady saying, "Oh my God, go put some clothes on." Never, I've never heard that. Whereas my wife in Australia, where because we were married and I'm Muslim and she's not, she would actually get her car spray painted that she's married a Muslim, so you're not worth anything type messages. So I find that they live and breathe a multicultural society, and again, it's very safe, it's very honest. I've left my phone and my wallet with money on the table, left the cafe and I totally forgot about it, came back and it was still in the same place. Even though other people had sat there they had just moved it into the middle of the table so that, you know, if I came back, it was still there. So all of these little things, I think from, you know, from an expat community, it's sort of a really amazing place to be. But from a dress code, I don't feel that for a woman, you need to change too much. You know, again, if you go to the mosque for a tour, you might have to wear like the scarf, but you know, most girls wear it as a fashionable item anyway, and they, you know, pose for selfies and stuff like that. So it's nothing really sort of that's going to impact your day to day, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned nightlife there. I mean, nightlife is very famous in Dubai. So like, if you're in a bar or a club in Dubai, you could be anywhere in the world. You don't feel like, oh, I'm in a bar in Dubai. It's a very healthy nightlife. So like Mo said, people live and let live, and everyone respects each other how they want to live. There is no overriding fear of, oh, I'm in the Middle East, I can't be drunk on the street. Well, you can, but like, you can, but you can't be crawling around, you know.
I think I told Miri before, like, I love my football and sports, so I'll go and smoke shisha, and I've got friends that drink. I don't drink, they drink. It's not like we can't sit in the same space. You know, like I said, I've never actually seen a fight ever in the 5 years that I've been here. Whereas in Australia, I used to see one at least every weekend when you go out, right? You can feel safe. My wife can go out with her girlfriends, and I don't have to worry about calling her or texting her, say, are you safe? Did you get there okay? It's just, you know, it's normal. And again, like you were saying, sometimes I go out and I forget that I'm in Dubai, like the whole bar or the whole cafe or the whole restaurant, you know, Brits or Americans, depending on the sport. And I leave and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I'm still in Dubai. Like, you know, it just takes you a second to adjust. So yeah, from a nightlife, there's clubs, there's bars, there's, you know, nightlife, and some of the big Las Vegas nightclubs are here. And there's, you know, Cirque du Soleil shows and all of this standard, you know, Western sort of nightlife. So yeah, so it's not bad.
Okay. So any other questions?
Yes, I have one. Hi, I'm Karen. I'm from Voyager Labs. So I'm just clarifying, you touched upon it, but just to clarify, if we're looking to hire a salesperson to sell into government agencies, so you were saying that it's preferable to hire local?
Not locals as in Emiratis, locals as in people who are already here. So they're local-based expats, right? So as long as, especially like you said, if you're looking to go government, I would always say an Arabic speaker makes the job easier, because again, it's that breaking the ice. It's even with myself, my Arabic isn't the greatest, but when I speak to government, it's breaking the ice and you build that rapport straight away. So I think that's probably the best option if you're looking to sell into government.
Okay, and without an entity, would that be considered as a disadvantage to someone who's local?
If you're trying to work with government entities, you literally cannot work with them unless you have an entity. Yeah, so because to work with them, to get sales off them or to get them to buy your products or whatever, you have to give them, again, you know, things that do security checks on your company and, you know, auditing, or not auditing, but sort of like a basic sort of background check on the company. And so as a freelancer or as a company without an entity, but hiring freelancers or contractors, it just wouldn't work. Yeah, that's with government. But again, if you're working with other brands or other sort of companies in the region, it's a little bit easier.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
I'm Usnatim from Appstar. We're in the EdTech industry, and I wanted to talk a little bit about relocations and supporting visas, because you said it's starting to be more common to have like a freelancer visa. But if we would like to, let's say, relocate an employee and support the visa process, so how easy it should be, and on the other hand, how common it is to work in a freelancer visa.
So when you're hiring someone, if you want to hire them as under your own company, so you're supporting their visa, it's quite easy. It takes about 5 days to get a visa.
But I'm talking if we don't have an entity, like considering that we don't have an entity and we need some kind of a third, like what is preferable to do? Have some as a third party, or?
I would probably say have a third party, because then that helps you if you're hiring, for example, a freelance salesperson. Then when he's going into a government entity or a company, he's working for a local, like the third party would be his employer. Okay, so that gives him a little bit of credibility to say I work with, or I'm sponsored by this company, or whatever. So that's that, and that's, again, it's a very simple process. You do obviously pay a little bit more than if you were to put them on your own visa because of costs and stuff like that associated with that. And then freelance visas, to be honest, it's literally just taken off over the last 12 months. It isn't as easy to do it as a freelancer as it would be to put it on a third-party company. But again, these things are changing rapidly. So over the last 12 months, it's become 100% easier, but it's still another 100% to go, if that makes sense. So yeah.
Okay. So do you have any other questions? Anyone? Okay. So I just wanted to add that, so we work closely with Xaaled and Muhammad. And if you have any hiring needs in the Emirates, feel free to contact me, and I will gladly help you find the best person. Yeah?
Miרי?
Yes?
Hi, it's Marav. Sorry.
Yeah.
Took the time to put on mute.
Yes,
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So I'm working already with Dubai and recruitment for the last 1.5 years. And one of the things that I realized is that the people used to move from job to job within 2 years maximum. So even 1 year or 1.5 years, it's something that's considered to be common in Dubai. Do you have any opinion about that? Because most of the time, if you see people jump from job to job, you might think that maybe they are not stable, all kinds of things. But here, I think it's something that even the opposite, you perceive from these people that they are very ambitious and they want to be promoted, and there are many opportunities. So it's something that is actually good.
So
when you see resume with lots of moves.
No, look, I totally understand. So when I first came here, I was surprised because, like you said, in Australia, people would stay 5-6 years, and they run their course, they grow, they get promoted, and they move on. Whereas here, it's a very transient sort of place, right? So people come here for 2 reasons: to either grow their career as fast as possible, because the rate of growth in the region, or in the UAE especially, if, for example, if you were working for Accenture or KPMG or something like that, in Australia or in the UK, to go from a manager to a senior manager to a director could take you 6 or 7 years. Here, you could do it in 3 or 4 years, right? So it's just a lot quicker. So people either come here for that, or they come here to make as much tax-free money as possible. So employers know this, and if they notice that someone has just come to the region, they might track them for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and then say, look, I know that you're being paid this. I really need you on my team. I'll pay you 30, 40, 50% more. And again, if you're moving to this region for money, then that's some of the challenges that companies have to face. So when I was saying the minimum when it comes to the basic employment law, that's why I always say, if you are in a position that you can look after your employees better, then that gives you a better chance of retaining the employees, right? So if you're, some people don't get medical insurance for their family, and then they have a baby, and then now they realize how expensive it is. And so then they will jump ship to another company who can provide it. Or, schooling, my kids are getting older now, so I now feel the pinch of how expensive schooling is here. So there are companies that will say, you know what, I know you've just had 2 kids, I'm going to give you schooling, and most people would jump at that. So you've got to really play into that sort of, making sure you look after your employees, making sure that they're rewarded. But at the same time, it's also about the job satisfaction as well. So some companies will work their employees to the bone, to the point where, they don't care if they lose money and they move, they'll do it, right? So you've also got to balance that as well. But generally, most people come here for 2 reasons: money or career growth. And, that's how I've always seen it. And most people will last 2 years max. And if they do that, they will come to you and say, I've done my 2 years, I need to get out. You know what I mean?
I think a lot of it's to do with the nature of the city as well. A lot of companies grew very fastly. There's a lot of companies constantly entering this market. So there's always a competitor in your industry looking to do things differently or push in another way. So that gives you the opportunity to jump as well, I think. A lot of companies have made hay while the going was good. And then as soon as the market turns down, then things aren't a great place. It doesn't turn out to be a great place to work. So you'll find people moving for that reason as well. So a lot of companies are reflective of how good they are doing in this market, not necessarily having the same, I don't know how to say it, but a lot of companies that are multinationals, the culture of looking after the staff is not as strong here, perhaps if they see it as just an offshoot Middle East sales office. Not every industry, but that's a lot of the companies are sort of just flagship here for sales purposes.
Yeah. And again, I've got some clients who might be big names in Europe or America, and like Khaled was saying, their office here is so small, but they sell themselves as we're part of this big group or whatever, and then people join them based on that, and they'll only do a year or 6 months or whatever because they've come here from overseas expecting it to be the same as what they know in Paris, for example, in London. They come in, they realize, no, this is definitely not what I signed up for. So then again, they'll go out and they'll find something. And it's like I said, it's a very transient market. So people are here for a couple of reasons. So that, that's part of the challenge of recruitment. But again, I've also got clients who look after people to the point where I will test my client to see if they're telling me the truth. And I'll go to one of their candidates and say, or one of the employees and say, I've got a job paying you 40% more. They're like, I'm not interested. I'm happy where I am. I'm looked after. I've got career growth. It's mapped out for me, everything. So again, it just really depends on what you want to do as a business to look after your staff.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So any other questions? Okay.
I have one more.
Yes, please.
In terms of lifestyle and when you live in the States, for example, you earn a lot of money and the day-to-day payments are pretty low. Go buying in a super, renting, and so on. What is the lifestyle in your space? Like, what is the average income for a family with 2 kids? Like, rent, buying the groceries, day-to-day life to maintain.
So look, I think for me, when I first came, I made the mistake of I wanted to live, because where I live in Australia, I live, an hour from the city, and that's where I grew up, and it's still a nice community. It's sort of like living an hour out of London. It's still nice, but you've got to travel to work and back. And so when I came, I wanted to live on the marina because that's what you see in all the photos. You see these nice, tall skyscrapers with the water views and things like that. So I did that, and then I realized very quickly with kids, it's not the best place to live. Plus, you're paying so much for something that's really, really small. So, I realized after 2 years or 3 years that, the further you go out, again, back to my same style in Sydney, you get more for your money. Schools are a lot cheaper. Groceries are a lot cheaper. So again, it depends on how you want to live. I always say, if you're trying to live like, a CEO, you can here and you'll spend crazy amounts of money. And if you just want to live within your means, you can also do that, but still be comfortable. Again, look, if you've got 2 kids who are in school, and if it's a double income family, so husband and wife work, if you're both earning a minimum of 25,000 dirhams a month, so 50,000 dirhams combined, which is about 10,000 pounds, a month tax free, then you'll be comfortable. You'll be quite comfortable actually. You'd pay rent, and I live in a 4-bedroom villa, whereas I pay less now than what I paid for a 2-bedroom apartment that was half the size. You know what I mean? Wow. And then, cars are quite cheap here, and you can get them on lease from 6 months up to 4 years. So it's quite standard, very much the same as Australia and the US and London.
I think the living standard in general is quite high, like the build quality of most accommodation that professionals are going to be living in. The infrastructure is strong, the roads are good. I mean, work-life balance is healthy as well. It's a very active city. There's a lot of options. I think Mo's an avid cyclist. There's a lot of options for your free time as well, as opposed to, I lived in London briefly, where the commute is a killer. and your free time is literally getting ready for the next day. Whereas here, I think you have a lot of options once work cuts off.
Yeah. So, you know, and then again, if you're got kids and you're a family and you're both working, then you usually would get a nanny or a maid. And again, that's very, very minimal cost. So, you know, an average nanny will cost you about, I don't know, say $600 US dollars a month. And she lives in with you. She looks after your kids, you know, baths them, cooks, cleans. And so then again, that frees up time for you to be able to do things with your partner, or if you want to take the kids out, at least, you know that someone's going to be cleaning and cooking and things like that. So like I was saying, the level of lifestyle is a lot higher. I'd never known anyone to have a nanny in my life in Australia. And okay, it's like every second person. I think I'm the abnormal one. Me and my wife don't have one. And people are like, but you live here, why don't you get one? I'm like, I don't know, because I'm not used to it. Again, yeah, like, you know, like I said before, a lot of people live within 10, 15 minutes from work. But when I tell someone I live 20 minutes from work, they're like, you live out in the middle of the desert. I'm like, not really, it's 20 minutes.
And how do you commute? Is it a train?
No, I drive.
I drive. Okay.
You have got a good metro system for when you first moved here. It was direct route.
Trunk of Dubai.
But it is a heavily driver city.
Yeah.
And driving here is all freeways. I wouldn't. Okay, Sheikh Zayed Road can get busy, but I think it flows quite well.
Yeah.
Driving here is relatively safe, I would say so.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's 100% sort of driver city. You can do without driving. Have got further development as well. But I think you be able to drive.
Yeah, and
so it's only very hot. The only disadvantage is that it's very hot.
Yeah.
You guys have no idea.
50 degrees in the summer?
Yeah, so we get up to 50 degrees, and I'm not joking when I tell you this, it gets up to like 98% humidity.
That's correct.
In some days. So like, there are days where you walk out with your glasses and they just fog up as soon as the door opens. The best way I explain it is for 3 months of the year, it's sort of like when you cook in your oven and you open the oven and that first gush of air.
That's how you feel.
Every day. But again, before COVID, most expats would travel during the summer break to go home, and school is off for two months. So my wife and kids, they'd never actually spent summer until this summer in Dubai, because they'd finish school, my wife would go, I'd stay here for work, go back and just visit them for a month and then come back together.
You don't do that as well. Actually, vitamin D deficiency is quite high here because you can literally be indoors in the AC constantly in the summer. So you don't feel it as much if the infrastructure was weaker. I think wherever you go, there is AC.
And that's why I was saying before, more play a big role in society here. So, you know, we've got ski parks inside, we've got, you know, go-karting inside, we've got, you know, theme parks. We've got a whole Warner Brothers movie world, and it's all indoors. You know, we've got DreamWorks Park, and it's all indoors. So, like, you know, they accommodate for this stuff because they know if it wasn't for 3 or 4 months of the year, you'd be dead. But again, I've been here 5 years, and this year was the first year that I could cycle outside all summer. Obviously, you'd go early in the morning or late at night, but, you know, my first 2 years here, you wouldn't have, if someone had told me there's $1 million on the street, all you got to do is walk a kilometer to get it, I would have told you no thanks, like zero chance. But now it's livable, it's you know, you get used to it.
Okay, so one more question from Lilith on the chat. If there are any remote working opportunities or everything need to be in the office, what's common?
So now that obviously COVID, it's changed everything. So I hate to use COVID as a reason, but you know, some things you just can't deny it. Before COVID, most companies here wanted people in the office. It was just, you know, it was still an old school mentality of if I can see them, that means they're working, right? But now with tech companies and COVID, a lot of people had to do remote anyway because offices were closed and things like that. And then eventually now I've got clients who, especially tech companies, that will say to me, Mo, I need to hire 25 developers and I don't want them in the country. They can be based all offshore within a 3-hour time difference, right? That's quite easy to do now. It's quite common. And now it's become one of the questions we ask when we're qualifying a job is, do these people need to be in your office, or can it be remote, or can it be remote within Dubai? So I've got clients who are in Abu Dhabi, and they are happy to now hire people in Dubai as long as they can, commute once a month to the office, right? So yeah.
Okay. Okay, I will be happy to hear if you have more questions for us.
No, to be honest, look, I think for me, I wanted to just ask just quickly.
Sure.
Has anyone? I know one of the ladies here said that they were already working with recruitment here in the UAE. Has anyone else had any experiences recruiting here or setting up entities here or anything like that, and can share, some pains or some positives or anything like that? Or is
question. Anyone wants to share? Okay. There is one company that I know that maybe she's not, she doesn't hear us, but I know they have an office already.
Okay. Yeah, I know one of my clients.
I can share.
Okay.
I was the one who said that I have experience. Actually, I want to share a very good experience that I have. At the beginning, we thought that we are opening a clinic, a medical clinic in Dubai. It's going to be ready next year, at the beginning of next year. But we are part of DP World. Probably you know this company.
Yeah, DP World, yeah.
Yeah, so the owner is the chairman of DP World of this clinic. And one of the things that we thought at the beginning that the talent won't be, so we will not find good talents there because it's an open country that accept everyone to come, and people are looking for opportunities. And actually, I was amazed to see the high caliber, the high profile of the talents. Really, really good people. They really look to do something. They are really focused on their career and career growth. Everyone is working. Everyone is looking to work in something good and interesting, and yes, to get a great salary. But that was one of the things that I realized, which help us a lot in the recruiting. And we have a very big challenges in recruiting. We need to recruit many people, and it seems like this is not the problem. The only problem is that what I mentioned, the challenges that we have is that, yes, we feel like the fact that we are opening a clinic and something that would do great in the world, it's not exactly what attract people, and they are much more interested in the salaries and benefits that they get. And what we realized is that we need to offer them a certain salary, and they will come to negotiate with us. So this is something that we learn, that we need to offer a certain salary and package. And 80% of the people came back and asked for more.
Yeah.
This is a challenge because this is something that it's not exactly the culture that we want to create. We want to attract people that really come also to work because what we do and not only because what we pay. Yeah. But we manage that. So now we are trying to give higher salaries and benefits, and we are at the beginning saying to people that it's non-negotiable, and they accept that. This is really funny. I thought at the beginning that they will not accept that and they will come back and negotiate again, but they are accepting that. I think they even respect that.
I think also if you partner with a recruitment agency who is reputable in the region, what you find is that when we do our screening, I sometimes reject candidates who might be amazing for the job, but are only driven by money. And I take that as my responsibility when I'm speaking to candidates on behalf of my clients, because I'm really an extension to their talent acquisition team or HR team, right? In theory. So I take upon myself to screen based on that if I feel that candidate is only driven by that as a factor. But like you said, if you make it very clear from the beginning that this is the package and it's not negotiable. A lot of people, as long as it obviously fits within their expectations, then it's not a problem. And like I said, if you give a good overall package, not just the salary, some people are happy to take less on the monthly salary if they get medical insurance for family or things like that. So that's good to hear. That's good to hear.
Yeah, very good to hear. Okay, so we're just on time for when we said we were going to finish. So first of all, I would really like to thank you guys, Khaled and Muhammad from ARC, for joining us today and for answering all our questions with patience, and you really provided us with really, really important information. So thank you so much for that, guys. Thank you everyone for coming and attending and asking really good questions. I will send you a summary of everything that was said here in writing, and also the recording of this meetup. As I said, if you have any hiring needs in EAU, then feel free to approach me, and I will be gladly, with the partnership that we have, help you. And thank you so much. Guys, can you stay? Khaled and Muhammad?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye. Odette, you're staying too, right?
Yes.